Earlier today, I held a writing workshop that used corpus tools to find solutions to writing sentences in biomedical research articles. And I gave the students 10 puzzles to solve that will hopefully show some of the power of these corpus tools. And I'm going to walk through each puzzle right now and share those answers. And there's not always one best answer. So I'm going to try to show you the way that I think is useful, but there might be other options. The two products that we're going to use are the One Health English corpus using AntConc interface and KOBS, the keywords, phrases of biomedical science articles through Excel. So question 1, which word usually comes before by which? And roughly what proportion of usage does it account for? This is a very specific question, and when we have specific questions, they're easier to answer. I'm just going to use this AntConc, and I already have loaded the OHEC corpus. If you're not familiar with how to load and use the basics of this tool, I recommend that you watch part 1, a video that I made some time ago to explain the basics. Let's go to my favorite tool, the Clusters Ngrams tool. We just really need to type in by which, make sure that the search term position is on the right, and sort by range. Range is a more important factor than frequency because range shows different papers and frequency is just how many times total. So for example, mechanism by is overwhelmingly the top for frequency and range, but I don't care so much if the same author uses this again and again. I'm more interested in many different authors using the same phrase. And we can see that mechanism and mechanisms by is really dominating the whole thing. In fact, our data set is so small, let's lower the minimum range to 1, which I almost never do. I almost always want minimum range at 2, so at least 2 authors use it. But look at this. Out of all of the uses of by which, we only have a total of 184 uses. And what is this? 140 of them are mechanism or mechanisms by. So that's about 75% of all uses are these two. Incredible. I love finding phrases like this. And I want to get more details. So I click on this. One thing that's a little bit unintuitive is you actually don't get the whole phrase on here. So even though it just says mechanism by, that's just the way the software is. It actually includes by which. Anyway, I have to type that here. And I'm also interested in mechanisms. And I'm going to add an asterisk after mechanism. That way it includes mechanisms and mechanism. And let's do this search one more time. Now we can get some interesting phrases. So I've already had it sorted in the way that I like. Since my phrase comes kind of after mechanism by which, I wanted to see what comes before it. So major mechanism, main mechanism. Molecular mechanism is pretty big and it's used by a variety of authors. Precise mechanism, interesting. And that's also authors from the US, UK, China, US, Spain. Well, lots of people use precise mechanism by which. To determine the mechanism. Okay, I like that. However, the mechanism, understanding the mechanism. Anyway, you get the idea. I just love to find phrases like this where so many people use this set phrase, but from different countries. They didn't plan with each other to do that. It's just that with this phrase, by which, they almost always mean mechanism by which. That is a relatively easy puzzle to solve. Let's get a little harder. Number 2, what are the most common perfect tense phrases in the introduction? So perfect tense would be has been doing, or past perfect tense is had done, something like that. Well, if we're only going to search in the introduction, let's say we're writing the introduction part of our paper, we should just search the introduction then. And that means I'm going to go to a different corpus, which is just a corpus of introduction articles. I'll just show you in the file view. For example, this one just has the first section. It's just the introduction of all of 649 articles. Well, I've already put in my formula here, and I'm using these wildcards in a few different ways. So first of all, I do HA with the wildcard search. That will include have and has and had. All three of those will be included here. And then I do wildcard with an N after it, and that will include lots of the common past participles like been, known, and other ones that end with N. But some of them end with NE, so I want to include that as well, and some of them end with ED. Now, you'll notice that I put this little bar here, this straight up and down bar. That means or. And I thought maybe I should also include DE for made, in case we have made. So let's see what we get. All right, has been shown, have shown that, has been reported, reported, identified, shown. Wow. So, okay, we already see in the top 5, 6 that shown and reported are really dominant on here. In fact, I did a quick calculation of these top 13, and more than half of the range is used by shown or reported. So, in the introduction section, if you are going to talk about what other people have done before, or even possibly your group has done before, probably you need to be using shown or reported, or maybe even both. They're quite common across lots of different authors. You can continue to go through, and if there's, of course, anything interesting, you can feel free to click on one. I'm kind of interested in this implicated. It's not super common, but still 11 different authors have used this phrase. Okay, so first of all, they all end with in, have been implicated in. Let's sort one to the left. And okay, proteins have been implicated in, strains that have been, mechanisms have been implicated. All right, interesting. And it's used France, USA, China, USA, Germany, USA, India, China, USA, France. A little bit heavy on the non-native speaking institutions. The corpus is 2/3 native speaking institutions. So if it was an even distribution out of 11, you should expect to see 7 or 8 native speaking countries. And here we see 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so interesting that implicated seems to be preferred by non-native speaking institutions. Not really sure what to make of that, but it's possible that a word like implicated or elucidated sounds really good to a non-native speaker. And although they're fine words, you can use them. I felt sometimes that non-native speakers overuse certain words like those that because they sound maybe attractive. So that's something that I've just really been struck by as I go through all this data. The simple words really are the most common used. Is an extremely common verb. It's okay to use simple words. It's something that comes up again and again on here. Okay, so those are the most common perfect tense phrases. I just kind of wanted a cluster size of 3. Of course, if you wanted to increase that, just turn it up to 4. Oh, sorry. I need to get back to my original formula because I clicked on that. I can just use the up arrow and I can get my previous searches back that way. So still quite a bit of range left, even with a cluster size of 4. Let's go up to 5 and see if we still have any interesting phrases. Has been shown to be, have been found to be. Okay, interesting. Well, now we're only getting to a range of 3, not quite as interesting. but that gives you the idea. Let's go on to question 3. What non-trivial verbs occur in at least 1 out of 3 papers in the introduction? Okay, well now we're getting less specific. I don't know how to write a clever formula to search on AntConc for all types of verbs. So this is when the KOBS comes into play. And we'll just go to the Introduction tab here. And this gives us all of these keywords that are correlated to the introduction section. Now there's 370 of these words. That's too many to read through one by one. So let's first filter the part of speech. We'll deselect everything and we'll just look for those that have a V. Sometimes a word can be an adjective or a verb, so we'll click that one. It can be a noun or a verb. And here we go, verb, verb or adjective, and so on. So we click all those verbs. Now how many do we have? Okay, we have 57. Still maybe too many to read through, so we just want frequency. This KOBS is by default sorted by the total frequency of each keyword. But since I'm only interested in the introduction, I'm going to sort frequency per text. Sort largest to smallest, and we get a little change. This is because the frequency per text only refers to that which is colored. So these first ones here that are the most frequent is, are, have, been. Well, actually, at the moment, I'm not interested in those. I was last question, but now I'm kind of saying what non-trivial verbs. I'm not so surprised that these words are in the introduction. Next one is established. However, as I said, since the medicine tab is colored, this data frequency per text means that the word established occurs in medical articles about 1.4 times. We don't have data for the intro, but I can just tell you that for the secondary correlated corpus, it's usually really quite a bit lower. If we really want to, of course, we can search easy enough by just going to our corpus here and typing in established, if it's that important to us. Okay, 108 times, so relatively common. However, 108 out of 649 articles is not 1 out of 3. So I'm going to ignore the ones that don't have the intro as the first corpus. So here we go. Now we got to a word, can. That's a little bit interesting to me. Can is a modal verb or a helping verb. Interesting to me that can is the top non-trivial verb in the introduction. All right, what else do we have? We have known. That occurs in 0.45 of every introduction, so almost in 1 out of 2 papers. So known is perhaps important. Identified is still above that 0.33. Elicited we will ignore. Related is just above 1 out of 3, and involved is almost 0.33. Let's include involved. And we'll forget about form because actually form is a noun as well anyway. So to answer my question, I would say that the involved, related, identified, known, and can. These are the words that are sort of used in at least every third introduction section. So if you are not using at least a few of these words, you might want to try to include those in your introduction next time.